Hey, what are you doing there?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. I'm training.
Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. It's time to take off the training wheels and see what this new pack did for every Rada viewer's favorite meme to beat endlessly into the ground. Trains. So here's the list, and there is something elegant about this one. It's simple. It's just guys being dudes. As always, I'll give you a little bit of background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and as always, the card by card. So firstly, for those of you that don't know, trains are an archetype, ironically, for the mechanically deficient duelist. These hulking chonkers of 10-star beefcake are good for one thing and one thing only, overlaying for 10-star Xyz monsters. This single-minded game plan isn't particularly interesting, but it is particularly potent. Their flagship monster, Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Superior Dora, and I did not make that up, can protect itself from card effects and pop individual cards using its attached materials effects. It's also got a 3,200 point attack stat that hits like a thing that hits very hard. The rest of this simile is escaping me. Unfortunately, despite repeatedly making huge dinguses, this deck has an inability to close out games. It just doesn't have efficient answers to set a monster every turn to block, especially since Master Rule 4 prevents multiple Doras. Until now. The most recent set release includes 4 extremely powerful pieces of train support: Speedy Express Bullet Liner, which recycles trains and provides more Xyz material, Flying Railcar, which reborns a rank 10 train and can change its level to fit as well, Urgent Schedule, which special summons 2 trains from deck, and Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Juggernaut Liebe, the oh lord he comin' of the archetype, a 4,000 attack monster that can power up to 6,000 attack and perform multiple attacks in one turn, finally giving them a reasonable win con. We've supplemented this list with format all-stars like Ash Blossom and Infinite Impermanence, Goes in Match, and Called by the Grave, alongside a small Naturia Beast package designed to clean house against Sky Striker. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First, we have 3 Night Express Knight, 3 Speedy Express Bullet Liner, 3 Heavy Freight Train Derek Crane, and 1 Exodius the Ultimate Forbidden Lord, which is really just a train cosplaying his favorite anime character at a convention. We're also on 1 Ruffian Railcar, less of a consistency piece and more of a bricky dingus these days, and 3 Flying Pegasus, followed by 3 Ash Blossom and a Glow-Up Bulb. For spells, we're on 2 Pot of Desires, 1 Soul Charge, 2 Terraforming, 1 Foolish Burial, 3 Called by the Grave, 3 Urgent Schedule, 3 Revolving Rail Yard, and Traps, 3 Infinite Impermanence, 3 Goes in Match, and a Skill Drain. In the extra, we've got Naturia Beast, 2 Precision German Win Condition, 2 Superior Dora, Gustav Max, Super Dimensional Robot Galaxy Destroyer, Jesus, Sky Palace Gongardi, the 7 Sins package, Nightmares Unicorn and Phoenix, Genius, and Mrs. Radiant. So with that, let's jump into the game. Our first match is up against Orchist, a very interesting deck that's about to lose all of its individuality to sit on an Omni-Negate. Let's prepare for the future here. Our hand is okay, it doesn't do a whole lot, but does have a couple of floodgates in it. We're going to start by normal summoning a copy of Night Express Knight, then special summoning a Speedy Express Bullet Liner before going into Dora, and at end step detaching this copy of Night Express Knight so we can get it back to our hand next turn with Bullet Liner. Our opponent's going to start with an Allure of Darkness, followed by a Terraforming. They're going to normal summon a Scared Zone, use Instant Fusion to go into Thousand Eyes Restrict. Of course, our Dora can protect itself by detaching Speedy Express Bullet Liner. That will make the Thousand Eyes Restrict fail. Afterwards, they will go to Nightmare Phoenix, and we will flip the target, which is Skill Drain. They'll pass it back to us and set a copy of Fogblade. At end step, we're going to use Speed Express to get Night Express Knight back to our hand, which is pretty good with a copy of Skill Drain on our side of the board. They will negate the effects of Liebe, which means we're going to attack directly with Night Express Knight, set a card, and pass it back to our opponent. They don't find action, so they concede. Not a particularly interesting game one, but I prefer a quick victory to a train wreck. Our second match is up against Pendulum Magicians, and my opponent has a very interesting take on the deck. Time Star Magician's effect can actually send any spellcaster from your deck to the graveyard, and the spellcaster my opponent has chosen is Fairy Tale Snow. They get to go first. They're going to start by activating this copy of Pendulum Call, getting Snow in graveyard and a couple of pendulums to hand. Afterwards, they will set scales, then activate Duelist Alliance for, Time Pendulum Graph. If I never saw that card again, it would be too soon. They'll then activate the effect of Harmonizing Magician before going into Electromite. They'll use the effect of Oath Dragon to get Purple Poison back before going into Time Star. Railcar. They're going to add another harmonizing to hand, set this copy of Time Pendulum Graph, and pass back to us. We're going to activate Terraforming for a copy of Revolving Switchyard. We'll activate Urgent Schedule for a couple of trains. As we activate the effect of Revolving Switchyard, our opponent is going to chain the effect of Time Pendulum Graph. We will chain a Dara Crane from our hand. They're going to get to eat 2 of our trains, and we're going to get a Flying Pegasus from deck. We'll use its effect to get Dara Crane back before going into Dora. Dora's going to pop that Time Pendulum Graph after they've activated it, and get over Star Time before setting 2 cards and passing it back to our opponent. They draw for turn. The first thing they're going to do is activate Black Fang. We will chain Dora. They will chain Snow. We will chain Goes and Match, so Snow can't come out. Dora is immune, and then Dara Crane can pop one of their scales. Electromite attempts to draw, but will flip up Skill Drain. They will attack over our Flying Pegasus, but we should be able to win from this position. For turn, we draw Speedy Express Bullet Liner. We'll use the effect of Revolving Switchyard after going into Liba for a Knight Express Knight who retains his attack. Will attack for 4,000, 3,000, and just a teensy-weensy bit over lethal. So it's time for Game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent is on Altergeist, which is probably pretty bad news for us. It doesn't seem like a good matchup. We're going first for Game 1, so we're going to activate this copy of Terraforming to get a Revolving Switchyard from our deck. We'll set that, then activate its effect to get a Dara Crane to hand before normal summoning a Pegasus, special summoning a Dara Crane, activating the effect of Pegasus, and getting an Infinite Impermanence and a Multi-Faker out of our opponent's hand. Afterwards, they'll go into Silky. We'll go into Genius to prompt the Silky activation. They will rise to the occasion, returning our copy of Genius. We will activate Urgent Schedule for a Railcar and a Bullet Liner before going to Genius once again and ending on a Soul Charge. We can now overlay for a copy of Sky Palace Gungardi to destroy this copy of Silquidius before going into Liba and passing it back to our opponent. Bullet Liner and Ruffian Railcar will add 2 cards back to our hand in our end phase, and our opponent will draw for turn. They're going to normal summon a Meluseek, set Secret Village of the Spellcasters, get in for 500, and destroy our copy of Liba before setting 1 card and passing. We draw for turn, and we should be able to do something with this hand. We're going to start with a Runaway Railcar Flying Pegasus. They will flip a Rivalry. That's fine with us, but of course it's really being used for the Multi-Faker activation. That's going to get a Silquidius from deck again. Of course, once again, we can prompt that early activation with Genius. They will respond by returning our copy of Genius, but uh-oh, is that an attack position Meluseek I see? Why, it couldn't be! Oh, what's that music? Oh no! Alright, so it's time for Game 2. Our opponent is on the play this time. They're going to start by activating the effect of Pot of Duality, and what do they find but... yeah, nothing really good here. They're going to add a copy of Ash Blossom to hand before activating Spellbook of Knowledge, setting 2 cards and passing back to us. Our hand is kind of nuts. We're going to start by normal summoning a Knight Express Knight under Revolving Switchyard. They will activate the effect of Ash Blossom, negating our Revolving Switchyard, forcing us to go into Speedy Express, Bolt Liner, and Dora, and there's Solemn Judgment. We'll set 2 cards and pass back to our opponent, getting this copy of Knight Express Knight back in the end phase. They're going to start by normal summoning a copy of Altergeist Marionette, setting a copy of Protocol, setting this personal spoofing in their main phase 2, and then passing it back to us. At end phase, we'll attempt to use Urgent Schedule, but there's another Ash Blossom. We draw for turn, and what do we find but it's Terraforming, kind of useless at this point. They're going to chain a personal spoofing to the Urgent Schedule. That's going to get a copy of Multi-Faker to their hand. We'll get a Flying Pegasus and a copy of Dara Crane. We'll activate the effect of our copy of Revolving Switchyard for a Ruffian Railcar. We'll activate Goes and Match in response to the effect of this Multi-Faker so they don't get anything, and then when we go to activate the effect of Gustav Max, they'll negate it with this copy of Protocol. We'll go into Mrs. Radiant and pass it back to our opponent. Ruffian Railcar is going to get a copy of Dara Crane to our hand. For turn, they draw a copy of Rivalry of Warlords. They'll set it, and unfortunately, it actually interacts with our board in a meaningful way. Yikes. Mrs. Radiant. Why did I have to go into Mrs. Radiant? I'll pass it back to my opponent. They really only have 1 more hit of misses they can take. They'll go into Meluseek, attack directly for 500, destroying our Goes and Match, and now we're in a little bit of hot water. Curse this Mrs. Radiant we can't get off our side of the board. We do 1400 to them, but 1 life point is really all you need. We'll use Revolving Switchyard and Speedy Express Bolt Liner. Our hand is full of everything. And now they're going to pop off. They'll start by normal summoning a copy of Marionette, then using its effect to destroy this copy of Protocol for a Multi-Faker. Multi-Faker will get a Silquidius. Silquidius will activate its effect to return the Mrs. Radiant, and they'll attack directly for 1600. We now are freed from Mrs. Radiant, but it's unlikely we'll be able to win. We're going to start by normal summoning a copy of Flying Pegasus, and trying to use its effect, they will respond with their copy of Infinite Impermanence. We're going to activate Dara Crane's effect, then we'll activate the effect of Revolving Switchyard. They will respond with Multi-Faker's effect. We get Pegasus, we ash their Multi-Faker, they prevent it from being negated, and now we've effectively lost. We're going to get Bullet Liner to our side of the field. We're going to try and prompt the activation of the Silquidius with this copy of Genius, but unfortunately they can just negate and destroy it with their copy of Protocol. They return a monster anyway, and then they have the Conchieri to prevent us for getting in. So it's time for that all-important Game 3. We're going first, which is great news. We're going to start by activating Terraforming for a copy of Revolving Switchyard. We will activate the effect of Revolving Switchyard, discarding an Exodius. We're going to normal summon a Night Express Knight and special summon a Heavy Freight Train Derricrane before going into Dora. We'll pass it back to our opponent. They're going to activate Pot of Duality, and what do they find? But a second copy of Evenly Matched. Sheesh. They're going to activate Infinite Transience. We will chain Dora. They will normal summon a copy of Meluseek, get in for 500, and destroy our Revolving Switchyard. They'll pass it back to us after setting 1. For turn, we draw a second copy of Pegasus. We'll activate Dora's effect on itself, normal summon the Pegasus, try to trigger the effect. They will respond with a personal spoofing, and now we're going to see the Multi-Faker activation. That means, of course, afterwards they're going to get a Silquidius. We do have outs to it. We'll activate Genius's effect. They will respond with Silquidius. This means we can use Revolving Switchyard's effect to get ourselves a copy of Speed Express Bullet Liner and go into Dora again. We will pop this copy of Personal Spoofing with Derricrane, very important to do so. They will activate Evenly Matched in the battle phase, but it's only a 1-for-1, and then they'll pass back turn. They're going to set 1. Dora is going to target itself, so we get Speed Express Bullet Liner's effect, and we'll draw for turn. It's an urgent schedule. That's interesting. We're going to use Flying Pegasus, targeting a Dora. They will infinite impermanence in response, and then special summon a copy of Altergeist Multi-Faker from their hand, and a Silquidius from their deck. Silk is going to return this copy of Dora, but we do get to eat it. We'll set 1 card and pass it back to our opponent. Our opponent draws for turn, and they are going to go to battle phase using the second Evenly Matched to proc Multi-Faker, getting a Meluseek from deck, but of course, after they make Hextia and use Meluseek's effect, we can activate Urgent Schedule for a copy of Ruffian Railcar and a copy of Derricrane. They're going to get a Marionetter. Marionetter is going to get them a copy of Materialization. They'll set the Solemn Strike and pass it back to us. Things are looking grim. We will go to battle phase, attack into this copy of Marionetter. They're going to chain the effect of Materialization and return our Derricrane. We're going to attack over with a copy of Ruffian Railcar, set a card and pass it back to our opponent. They draw into a personal spoofing. They'll set 2 and pass it back to us. Things are still looking bad, but an urgent schedule makes it look a little better. We're going to attack once again into Hextia. They will once again use Materialization to get Silquidius. We'll activate urgent schedule to get a Flying Pegasus and a Derricrane, then use Flying Pegasus' effect and Derricrane's as well. Of course, Flying Pegasus does nothing because it's negated. In main phase 2, we'll normal summon a Ruffian Railcar, use Genius to try and negate the effect of Hextia. They will Solemn Strike our Dora, and we have to pass it back to our opponent. Since the last card they have is personal spoofing, this game is effectively over. They can go ahead and shuffle a Multi-Faker. We can transience it, but spoofing is just so powerful. It means on their turn they're going to be able to do exactly what they do. Shuffle it back for a copy of Marionetter, and use Marionetter's effect to get a copy of Materialization. They're going to attack into our copy of Genius directly for 1600 and pass it back to us. What do we draw? But an Ash Blossom, so we'll concede. So we're back with the deck, and that last one was a lot closer than I thought it would be at the very least. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1, it's easy. The setup is so simple, it's so intuitive, and the OTKs don't require 35 minutes of Salaman-grade math. It's not mentally taxing, which is a great quality for a competitive deck to have, especially if you expect to pilot it through a 9-round tournament. 2, it's consistent as all hell. The field spell is amazing, and every card effectively does the same thing. And 3, it gets access to some of the best floodgates in the format. Goes in and skill drain win games on their own, and having multiple 3000 attack monsters behind it is excellent. And the cons. 1, it's really weak to Ash Blossom. Both Revolving Switchyard and Urgent Schedule have to resolve if you want a shot at victory, and both are interruptible. 2, it's not particularly adaptable. The rank 10 pool isn't that deep, and if you don't have an out between Sky Palace and Robo Destroyer, then you don't have an out. And 3, it's just a little too fair. Often you're using your monsters to overlay for Dora the old-fashioned way, and 2-for-1ing yourself all game isn't a particularly effective strategy, no matter how many Speedy Express searches you get. All in all, the deck is definitely rogue competitive and will get better when Knuckles comes out. As much as I'd like to tell the memers to stop talking up trains, you can't argue with results. Or Germans. So that's that. I'm recording this late, so shouts out to my upstairs roommate. I'm done, I promise. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/mbtygo every Monday from 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, and if you want to see a certain deck or archetype on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comments section below and I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, I'll see you Friday.